Welcome to Gamechangers live from Miami, Florida. My name is Sergio Tigera. I'm your host. And each and every week, we bring you someone who has been a game changer in their field and who's touched the lives of thousands to get their perspective on their journey, their mindset, their struggles and successes so that we can inspire you on your journey. So let's get started right now. And welcome to Gamechangers Live. We're on our 51st episode. We just hit the 50 mark. Now we're going to kick it off on the 51st with some amazing content. And we come to you each and every episode with leaders who have been game changers in their field. And my guest today is Ian Clifford. And Ian brings more than 25 years of experience in the fields of technology and marketing, and has successfully led the FuelPositive organization to global brand recognitions through its unique energy solutions. And from 2006 to today, he's raised more than $60 million in equity financing for the company. And they're doing some really amazing things that are changing the game in the industry when we're talking about carbon emissions reduction. So Ian, welcome, my buddy.
Hey, it's great to be here, Sergio.
Hey, so you're coming to me from the great country of Canada, up in the Quebec mountains. I'm down here in Miami, but you know, the beauty of Zoom is we get to connect with leaders like yourself from all over the place nowadays to hear about what you guys are doing. And so, before we get into the company, what I love to do is always kind of talk to you about what's your journey, and we love to inspire other people on theirs. So, tell me a bit about your background, kind of how you got to where you are.
Sure. I mean, it's been a really interesting and varied journey experience through my life. I actually started my professional career as a photographer. I was one of the great Ansel Adams. Yeah, one of the great Ansel Adams assistants way back when I was 18.
Wow.
So I was 18 years old. Yeah, I was 18. He was 84. We were in Yosemite and in Carmel. So I was experiencing not only one of the greatest photographers of certainly of the last century, but also a tremendous environmentalist. Ansel was deeply involved in the Sierra Club and founding of the Sierra Club. He obviously, his photography spoke volumes to the preservation of the outstanding beauty, natural beauty in this world, and that had a pretty profound effect on a teenager at that time. So I was really, really lucky. Just serendipity brought me to him, and I was one of many who assisted him and learned a tremendous amount through that exposure. But how did
that happen? How did you just kind of walk into that opportunity with such a legendary photographer?
Well, it was interesting because I had run into and heard of one of his primary assistants, John Sexton, a very amazing photographer in his own right, and met John in Detroit years and years ago at a exhibit of his. And he said, "Hey, why don't you come along down to Yosemite, down to Carmel, and help out? You've you've got the passion." You've got the interest, and I think there's a lot you can learn through this experience. And this was Ansel's nature. He just loved to teach. He loved to share. He was an incredibly generous soul, and that was sort of set me on a course that took me through a whole bunch of different iterations. But I've always had an underlying and passionate interest and desire to preserve this planet this tiny little planet that we all live on, and do everything I can to improve that. So that was really the genesis as a very, very young photographer.
It's very interesting how the events of our lives, especially at a young age, tend to shape our perspective going forward, right? That we take it with us for the rest of our lives.
Yeah, and keeping an open mind, right, and letting things happen. I mean, I think so many people are closed to change today, and the future of the world is based on change. If we can't change things, we're stuck, and we are so stuck right now that change. It's all about change. So again, which is one of the visions of our company is to make sure that we're doing things that can happen now. We're not looking 20 years down the road. We are looking at technologies that can be implemented today. So that's a big value that has been carried through really my whole life.
And so you did that for a number of years, a few years
Well,
with
no,
him, or
it was less than 6 months at the time, because I was heading off to university right after. So it was I had this window of opportunity that I took, and then studied photography, became a commercial photographer back in the early 80s, had a very exciting and varied career. But interesting, I'd always had an interest in electric vehicles. So I had, and this was always in the back of my mind.
this is in the 80s when electric vehicles, I mean, we're talking Back to the Future type, space stuff that doesn't exist.
No one was even thinking about them. But one thing through my career, I led me into internet marketing. Very early on in the boom, started an internet marketing company back in 1995. Built that up through the whole wave. Sold that at the height of the market in 2000, in March of 2000. And then I really took an early retirement at that point, but then was starting to think, what can I do next? And this sort of nagging interest in electric cars came back to me. And ultimately, my fascination became very much focused on battery technology, energy storage, fossil fuel replacement, and all of those things kind of have come together now in FuelPositive. Which is a company now entirely focused on the future of fossil fuel replacement. And I mean wholesale replacement. This is not just an additive that goes into a gas tank. This is the notion that we can run our vehicles on carbon-free solutions. And I'll get into detail on that, obviously, as we chat.
Yeah. And so you got into the electric vehicle space. So you were a founder in one of the companies that was doing this early on?
Absolutely. Yeah, I was a founder in Zen Motor Company. So this goes back to 2000, 2001. So again, long before anyone was
way before Tesla.
Way before, virtually almost a decade before in that sense. And we were building neighborhood electric vehicles and selling them predominantly throughout the US. And we sold about 1,000 cars, which at the time made us one of the largest electric car companies in the world, but became very interested, as I said, in energy storage technology. So we started to invest in a technology being developed in Austin, Texas, actually, that was a solid state energy storage device. Became more and more focused on that technology, and we're still actively working on that, actually, with a group associated with NASA. So that's one part of our business is of course energy storage, making a better battery. But about 18 months ago, we were introduced to a technology related to carbon-free ammonia, or carbon-free NH3, which is its molecular name, and started to think, well, hold on a second. There is a technology available and from an intellectual property perspective being developed today that can effectively replace fossil fuels as a combustion material. And this was a sort of a watershed moment for us, realizing that this was a possibility. So we started our due diligence on this about 18 months ago. We ended up purchasing the intellectual property in April of this year, and we're now in the process of commercializing the technology. And I'm happy to get into the applications of it, obviously, but this is how all of these bits and pieces have come together in a company that is really deeply committed to not only eliminating our carbon footprint, but looking at it across a spectrum of industries and applications.
And that really is the holy grail, right? It's eliminating the carbon footprint, is getting rid of the NOx and particulates that are out there and polluting and so forth. Everyone knows that we've been very, very close to kind of breaking through, but this is absolutely another solution that lends itself to current equipment that's out there. It's not that you can change an internal combustion engine into an electric one very easily, but now you're able to use this NH3 product as a replacement for gasoline.
Yeah.
Right?
So I'll just give you you and your listeners just a very short background on ammonia. So ammonia as an industrial product was invented about a little over 80 years ago. through an incredibly carbon-intense process, utilizing coal or fossil fuel for the creation of ammonia. But ammonia is a breakthrough molecule in the sense that the utilization of it exists across all sorts of different industries. About 80% of ammonia today is utilized in agriculture. So it's an incredible fertilizer. NH3, of course, it has a very large nitrogen molecule surrounded by 3 hydrogen molecules. So not only is it nitrogen dense, it's also very hydrogen dense. And I'll talk about that in a second, the significance of that. But what it meant to society through the last century was that we were able to produce enough food on the planet to feed people as a result of the commercialization and industrialization of ammonia. It was a central building block to agriculture. However, it has this huge carbon footprint. So for every unit of ammonia produced today through traditional means, it is the highest carbon producer on the planet. So it's never been looked at as an environmental solution. It's just used as an industrial solution because of what it is. So this is why the introduction of the technology that we've acquired, which allows you to produce carbon-free ammonia utilizing sustainable electricity, water, and air, our systems can produce carbon-free ammonia on site where it's needed. So our systems are modular. They're scalable. They're built on 20-foot or 40-foot container platforms. They can be transported anywhere in the world that they're needed. And as long as you've got a source of renewable electricity, you've got the ability to manufacture and store for your use all the carbon-free ammonia that you need. So it's a big paradigm shift from the way ammonia is obviously produced today, which is huge refinery type facilities. It's centralized production. It's then transported all over the world. So there's a huge transportation footprint for ammonia. Our business model is complete opposite. We're saying that these small modular systems that FuelPositive are manufacturing can be utilized where it's needed and when it's needed. And that's a much more efficient way of first of all, creating ammonia, but also the only way, really sustainable way to create carbon-free ammonia as well.
Very interesting. So you found solutions where others only saw it as a problem, right?
Correct.
And that takes some different type of thinking and like you said, a paradigm shift in terms of the approach to this and the reputation that ammonia has had as being something that's producing carbon emissions and so forth, is polluting, and you're able to find a solution where it was once viewed as a problem. Correct. Very interesting stuff, right? I mean, that's where the magic happens.
Well, that's where the magic happens, but it's also where change happens, right? Yeah. Is realizing that we know better ways to make things happen. We just have to. It's about implementation. So you've got to get away from this notion that the way we've done things in the past is the only way to do things in the future, that we have to improve things we've done in the past, but that's not the case. We can change the things that we've done in the past. We can do them in new and much more intelligent ways, much more sustainable ways, and ways that are deployable and scalable around the world. So in the case of fossil fuel replacement, the interesting thing about ammonia is that it can be burned as a fossil fuel replacement. Some of the earliest NASA test aircraft were powered by pure ammonia, incidentally. So it's a great fuel. As I said earlier, it has a huge hydrogen concentration without the problems that pure hydrogen have in terms of storage and transportation. Ammonia is a really stable molecule. It's liquid at a much lower pressure than hydrogen. It's liquid at about -30 degrees Celsius compared to cryogenic temperatures for hydrogen. So in fact, carbon-free ammonia is the ideal carrier for hydrogen in a hydrogen economy. So not only does it have its own role, but it also has an enabling role for the hydrogen economy, which of course, so many people are talking about around the world, as hydrogen is the perfect fuel. The other thing though about ammonia is it's also an amazing fertilizer, right? So agriculture, right, through the last century has been an incredible emitter of not only not only carbon, but also other pollutants. So agriculture, of course, is looking at ways to clean up its act. So our systems implemented on site on farms allows a farmer to produce and store all the ammonia they need for fertilizer purposes as a carbon-free fertilizer, but they can transform their tractors and combines to run on, instead of running on gasoline or diesel, those engines can run on pure ammonia. So they can produce
the cost savings could be huge. Not only the, you know, the carbon footprint, but the cost savings alone should pay for itself.
Well, think about it, and also think about the supply chain, right? So suddenly,
especially now.
Well, exactly, who are so susceptible to supply chain fluctuations on the ammonia side and on the fossil fuel side, suddenly owns and controls their own means of production, right? And they've got it there on site. As long as they've got a source of renewable electricity, so it could be wind, it could be solar, it could be hydro, it could be geothermal. And the neat thing about farms, a lot of farms are perfect for their own solar array that could then be creating and storing their own fertilizer and fuel. Ammonia is also a great natural refrigerant. It can replace propane for crop drying. I mean, it's an incredible, that's why I'm saying it's an incredibly versatile molecule, as opposed to something like hydrogen, which primary use is energy. So ammonia covers a whole spectrum of opportunity that other carbon replacements just can't even touch.
Now, how does it work? I mean, what is the secret sauce, if you're allowed to talk about it? How do you actually make this carbon free? And how could they do it just on site? What are the ingredients? How does the process work?
Sure. Well, without getting into anything proprietary, and I'd have to illustrate it for you to demonstrate it, so it doesn't matter. But talking it through, well, the starting point is to have a sustainable source of electricity. So a carbon-free source of electricity is essential. So if your electricity source is natural gas, or if it's coal, the end product will have a carbon footprint related to the carbon footprint of the electrical source.
The energy that's being used, yeah.
Right. So in Canada, there are multiple sources, multiple provinces across Canada have virtually carbon-free electrical generation through hydroelectric, through wind and solar. And the same exists in the United States, but it is geographic. So that's one consideration. Then the inputs are water and air. So from the water, utilizing electricity, you crack out the hydrogen. And from air, you basically extract the nitrogen. And then our proprietary reactor system, which is an extremely efficient reactor, runs at very, very, very low pressures and very low temperatures. So it's extremely energy efficient. It then synthesizes those two materials, nitrogen and hydrogen, into ammonia, which then is stored as a liquid. It can be stored as a gas, but is typically pressurized and stored as a liquid, similar to propane. And it's a very stable, very safe molecule. If you need to transport it, it's easy to transport. It's safe to transport. In a farm situation, of course, you'd be storing large amounts for fertilizer purposes. It's then injected into the soil. The nitrogen stays where it's needed. The hydrogen dissipates safely. And that's how it's been used for decades on farming specifically. So, but the neat thing is you can also burn it. And if it's burned properly, it has no NOx footprint. And basically the exhaust is water vapor. So it's this remarkable material, as I said, and incredibly versatile. So the other application that we see, there's a whole bunch, but another one that is immediate is, of course, transportation. And we've talked about the ability to convert internal combustion engines to run on pure ammonia. So imagine a trucking company, for instance. So, a trucking company today will have fueling depots. The diesel trucks will run in, they'll refuel in diesel, and they'll be on their way. A depot could have a FuelPositive system generating and storing carbon-free ammonia. The conversion of a diesel engine, as I said, to run on pure ammonia is relatively straightforward. So instead of refueling on diesel, they'd be refueling on carbon-free ammonia, and they'd be on their way. which is about as simple as it sounds. This isn't about creating a hydrogen superhighway or
Right.
creating infrastructure that doesn't exist. This is all based on a modular, scalable technology that we're building. We're building the pilot systems right now that will be in demonstration early in 2022.
And what would a gallon or a liter of ammonia cost for the trucker versus, let's say, a gallon or a liter of diesel?
Well, it's entirely competitive pricing. This is the key: is that you want to make sure you're not pricing some material that has there's a huge cost up front in terms of
Right.
Either the infrastructure or the cost of the material. So it will be entirely competitive with diesel. But the other thing that is very interesting is that carbon-free ammonia will also be eligible for carbon credits. So this is the first time a fossil fuel replacement at this scale would be eligible for carbon credits. So for every liter of carbon-free ammonia that the end user produces, they're going to receive a carbon credit for that as well. And there's value in those today. I mean, the carbon credits, there's a very, very significant economy for that. We've seen that. I mean, in Tesla, most of their revenue has been based on selling carbon credits. Whereas this, you're going to be generating carbon credits, but you're also going to be producing a carbon-free fuel that will be utilized in transportation. And the neat thing is it can be used across all sectors. It's not just trucks. You can use this. There's a big push now for marine use, replacing bunker fuel, which is one of the dirtiest fuels on the planet, with ammonia. The focus again, everyone wants to get to carbon-free ammonia, but that's the challenge: is what technologies are going to get us there first. And clearly, what we've got is shoulders above what our competitors have. We've got an amazing team from a technology perspective. The technology was developed by Dr. Ibrahim Dinser and his group at Ontario Technology University, just outside of Toronto. They're an incredibly innovative group. So we have the first patent applied for in June, and we have a whole subsequent group of patents being worked on right now as well. So not only will the intellectual property be protected, but for us, it's also building these systems, getting them out in market as quickly as we can.
So the market for this is absolutely massive. How do you focus your resources and target, here's priority 1, priority 2, priority 3. What are those for you guys?
Well, obviously, starting with agriculture makes no sense. I mean, that
low-hanging fruit, right?
It's so familiar with ammonia, so there's no learning curve. There's huge incentives to decarbonize agriculture around the world. Big incentives in Canada. I know the same in the States. So that's a great place to start. And farmers today, who are so, as you had pointed out, are so vulnerable to the supply chains that they rely on, to give them energy independence, fertilizer independence, is a profound offering. Like this is why, and the big ammonia producers, they can't answer that. They're not in that headspace. Their idea is slowly we'll transition to blue ammonia, then we'll transition to green ammonia, and eventually it'll be carbon free. We're just saying, we just eliminate that process, eliminate the middle person in terms of distribution, and give the as I said, the means of production directly to that farmer or group of
the margins are so small in agriculture. I mean, this would be a big help for them.
Absolutely. Yeah, very, very significant. And their margins are so tied to these fluctuations in costs that they have no control over. So we're saying, here's some great control. So we've been working really hard with the Canadian government, provincially, looking at where are the perfect pilot projects for the technology, where are we going to get the most visibility out of this. And we expect, again, over the next, before 2022, we'll be announcing where those initial pilot projects will be, who's participating, and so on. So it's a really dynamic time for us. We're exploring all of these different opportunities, and there's so much interest, which is just great.
Wow, you guys are doing some amazing things in the space. Ian, where can people find more information about you guys? And are you listed on the Canadian Stock Exchange?
Yeah, we are both listed in Canada on the Toronto Stock Exchange, the Venture Exchange. Our trading symbol is NHHH. And we are on the OTCQB market in the US under NHHF, like Frank. So very easy to find, very easy to trade. We were just uplisted in the US, so it's very easy now for American investors to invest in the company, which is important for us because, I mean, this is essentially a Canadian technology story, but we are very, very serious about exporting this technology around the world. And we're building it on container platforms really for that reason, right? So that it is
easy to transport, right?
We can deploy this everywhere it's needed, and provide, as I said, this independence that so many end users are craving. We're all trying to, I mean, the whole movement around decentralization is so significant and vital. And we can see that, you know, when storms come through or other things happen, we're so vulnerable to
right now with Ida too.
Yeah, well, centralized distribution is a huge issue. And now imagine you had fuel positive systems throughout the grid. It's also an incredible grid storage technology. So if you've got excess wind, excess solar, excess geothermal, excess hydro technology or generation rather, you could be producing in your off-peak producing capability and storing carbon-free ammonia and then firing up small turbines to satisfy demand during peak demand. So it has a whole bunch of application across, as I said, so many different technologies and applications.
Fantastic, my friend. Hey, Ian Clifford, Chief Executive Officer of FuelPositive Corporation. Check them out, guys. They're doing some amazing, amazing things. Thanks for spending some time with me on Gamechangers, my friend.
That's great, Sergio. I really appreciate any time. Happy to give an update anytime.
If you loved what you heard in today's episode of Gamechangers, please subscribe and rate us. The lessons and the stories in these podcasts are immensely valuable, so I invite you to share them with a friend who needs to hear it. You may end up being the game changer in their lives.